It started with a whisper, then a headline, then a flood of notifications lighting up phones across the globe. Prince Harry, the man who once vowed to never back down, who famously said he was willing to lose everything for love, had reportedly done the unthinkable. He apologized. Not quietly, not privately, but publicly, according to multiple royal commentators and media insiders. An apology directed not at the press, not at critics, but at Prince William and King Charles. And it came at the exact moment social media exploded with unverified claims and leaked chatter about a previously undisclosed financial account allegedly linked to Meghan Markle. Was it coincidence? Or was this the moment when years of tension, pride, and carefully curated narratives finally cracked? Because here's the part that made even seasoned royal watchers sit up straight. Harry didn't just apologize for words. He reportedly apologized for damage caused. A phrase loaded with implication, regret, and something that felt dangerously close to admission, without actually admitting anything at all. So what really happened? Why now? And why did this apology feel less like a PR move, and more like a man realizing he'd reached the end of the road? Let's unpack the story step by step, because the deeper you go, the more complicated it becomes. And by the end, you may see the royal drama very differently. The financial claims that lit the match, and why words matter here. Before we go any further, one thing needs to be clear. No court has ruled. No crime has been proven. No official authority has confirmed wrongdoing. What has happened is something equally powerful in today's world. A narrative caught fire. Online commentators, tabloid analysts, and social media sleuths began circulating claims about a previously unknown financial account allegedly connected to Meghan Markle, framing it as hidden, secret, or undisclosed. Those words alone were enough to send the internet into overdrive. Because in the court of public opinion, nuance doesn't trend, suspicion does. Was the account real? Was it legal? Was it old, inactive, misunderstood, or taken wildly out of context? None of that stopped the speculation. And that's the first lesson here. Once a story becomes emotional, facts struggle to catch up. Royal insiders pointed out something fascinating: the speed at which language escalated. What started as unreported became hidden. What was unclear became shady. And soon, some corners of the internet were using outright criminal language, despite zero proof. That shift matters, because reputations don't collapse on facts alone. They collapse on perception. And perception, once poisoned, is incredibly hard to reverse. But here's where the story took a sharp turn. Because instead of attacking back, instead of issuing denials, instead of blaming the press, Prince Harry reportedly chose a very different move. Harry's apology, a strategic retreat, or a personal breaking point. If you've followed Prince Harry's public journey over the past decade, one thing is undeniable. Apologizing to the royal institution has never been his default setting. This is the man who publicly accused the palace of cruelty, described family relationships as broken beyond repair, positioned himself as a truth-teller against a cold, unfeeling system. So when royal commentators began reporting that Harry had personally expressed regret to both Prince William and King Charles, eyebrows shot up everywhere. The phrasing mattered. Not, "I'm sorry you feel this way," but reportedly, "I'm sorry for the damage this has caused." That's not defensive language. That's reflective language. And it suggests something far more human than strategy. Because apologies usually come after one of three things: legal advice, emotional exhaustion, a moment of clarity, or sometimes all three. Sources close to royal observers say Harry appeared tired, subdued, and notably quieter in recent appearances. No dramatic speeches, no fiery interviews, no counterattacks, just silence. And silence, in royal terms, often means something big is happening behind the scenes. So what changed? Many believe the answer lies not in money, but in family. When pride meets consequences, why this moment feels different. For years, the rift between Harry and William has been framed as ideological. Tradition versus progress, duty versus freedom, institution versus individual. But moments like this reveal something else entirely: the cost of being right. Harry has always framed his journey as a moral one, standing up for his wife, protecting his family, telling his truth. But moral certainty can be lonely. And when narratives spiral out of control, especially ones involving finances, trust, and transparency, even the strongest convictions can start to feel heavy. Royal analysts suggest this moment may have triggered a realization Harry couldn't ignore. That no matter how justified you feel, no matter how much you believe you're protecting someone, you can still cause damage. And that damage doesn't just hit institutions. It hits siblings, fathers, children, legacies. Imagine being Harry for a moment. You leave everything behind. You burn bridges believing they'll never matter again. And then suddenly, the world isn't applauding. It's questioning. And worse, it's dragging the people you love into narratives you can't control. That's a sobering place to stand. But the story doesn't end there. Because while Harry was reportedly reaching out, the palace was doing something very different. The palace's response, why silence, was the loudest statement. No press conference. No denial. No counterattack. Just nothing. And in royal communications, nothing is never nothing. The palace's silence sent a message that many observers found chillingly effective. We don't need to argue. Time will do the work. This is a strategy as old as monarchy itself. Let public opinion churn. Let narratives overextend. Let speculation burn itself out. Because eventually, without new fuel, outrage collapses under its own weight. But silence also carries risk. It allows stories to grow unchecked. It lets imagination fill the gaps. So why choose it now? Because silence implies confidence. And confidence implies that someone believes the truth, whatever it may be, will survive scrutiny. That's a powerful position to take. And it puts immense pressure on the other side. Which brings us back to Harry, Meghan, money, and the internet's obsession with control. There's an uncomfortable truth beneath this entire saga. The fascination with Meghan Markle's finances isn't really about money. It's about control. Ever since she entered the royal orbit, Meghan has been scrutinized not just as a public figure, but as a disruptor, an outsider, an American, a woman who didn't follow the script. And nothing triggers suspicion faster than a woman who appears autonomous. Financial independence, especially for women in powerful institutions, has historically been treated as something to be explained, or worse, justified. So when vague claims about finances surface, they don't land neutrally. They land emotionally. That doesn't mean scrutiny is unfair by default. Transparency matters for public figures. But it does mean reactions are rarely proportional. And Harry likely understands this better than anyone, which may explain why his response focused less on defense and more on reconciliation. The bigger picture, what this teaches us about reputation in the digital age. Here's the uncomfortable takeaway most people don't want to admit. In today's world, truth is slower than outrage. Once a narrative forms, headlines reinforce it, algorithms amplify it, people emotionally invest in it. And reversing that narrative requires more than facts. It requires trust. That's why this story matters beyond royalty. Because it mirrors what happens to ordinary people every day. A rumor spreads at work. A screenshot goes viral. A misunderstanding becomes identity. And suddenly, you're explaining yourself to people who've already decided who you are. Harry's reported apology may reflect something deeply relatable. The moment you realize that being right isn't as important as being at peace. Where does this leave the royal family now? No one knows what happens next. Will there be reconciliation? A private meeting? A quiet reset? Or will this apology simply become another footnote in a long, painful separation? What is clear is this. Something shifted. Harry's tone shifted. The palace's posture shifted. And the public conversation shifted from accusation to exhaustion. People aren't asking, who's guilty, anymore. They're asking, why is this still happening? Who benefits? And how does it end? Those are the questions that matter. Final thoughts, and a question only you can answer. This story isn't really about a bank account. It's about what happens when personal lives collide with public narratives, and no one fully wins. It's about how fast we judge, how slow we forgive, and how rarely we pause to ask whether the loudest story is actually the truest one. So here's the real question. If you were in Harry's position, caught between love, loyalty, and legacy, what would you do? Would you fight harder? Defend louder? Or finally step back and say you're sorry, even when the truth is complicated?